Welcome to Daily News Simplified, the answer to what, why and how of newspaper reading. Today I am going to discuss Delhi edition dated 23rd April 2018 of The Hindu. So let's begin. We will discuss this article that appears on page 14 and it reads Use of Blockchain Beyond Cryptocurrencies. So this article talks about the various applications of blockchain technology in different fields, and this is particularly important from your mains exam point of view. So as you all must be knowing that the blockchain technology has been popularized by the cryptocurrency bitcoins because blockchain is the underlying technology for bitcoins. But even though the Indian government does not consider bitcoins as legal tender or any other cryptocurrency as legal tender, still the government is exploring the idea of this blockchain technology because it has wide-ranging applications in many fields such as healthcare, banking, education, agriculture, etc. And so in today's discussion, we will try to understand what are the applications of blockchain technology across all these areas and how it will benefit the Indian economy. So the blockchain technology has many benefits. The first important benefit would be its wide-ranging applications across various sectors, such as these sectors that I mentioned right now. What blockchain can do is that blockchain technology can help in improving the services that are provided through these sectors. How it will be done, that we will also discuss briefly. But you should understand from here that blockchain can not only be used as a technology for cryptocurrencies, it can also be used in sectors such as healthcare, banking, education and agriculture. Secondly, since blockchain technology involves recording of information in a traceable manner, then it can play an important role in improving the ease of doing business in the country. Thirdly, the blockchain technology can play an important role in reducing the risk of frauds. This is because blockchain technology will help in improving credibility, accuracy and efficiency of the contract, and thus it will help to reduce the risk of frauds in contracts. So till now we have understood the main benefits of blockchain technology, that is it has wide-ranging applications across various sectors, it will help in improving ease of doing business in the economy, and it will help to reduce the risk of frauds in the economy. Now let's understand this point 1 in detail, that is how blockchain technology can be used in all the different sectors. The first important application of blockchain can be in the field of financial services. Here, blockchain has many important applications in the banking sector. One such application is digitizing vendor financing through blockchain. That is, blockchain can help in digitization of processes in the banking sector. This will also help in timely processing of operations because no physical documents and manual intervention are required. And thus, it will help the parties to track the status of transactions in real time. Next, the blockchain technology can have wide-ranging applications in the health and pharmaceutical sector. In health, for example, in the insurance sector, blockchain technology can be used to reduce the burden of insurance claim frauds by ensuring transparency. Similarly, in the pharmaceutical sector, the blockchain technology can be used to prevent the sale of spurious drugs, and this can be done by tracking every step of the supply chain network of pharmaceuticals. Next, blockchain technology can be used in the education sector as well. Here, it can help in creating a repository of students which will help to improve the credibility of students who will seek jobs in the future. That is, blockchain can be used to create a total database of students. Next, blockchain technology can be used in the agriculture sector as well. Here, seasonal data related to crop and climatic cycles can be protected using the blockchain technology, and thus it will benefit the agriculture research and market agencies. And lastly, blockchain technology can be used in property transactions as well. That is, the use of this technology will bring in built-in transparency, traceability and efficiency of property transactions, and thus it will help in improving the property transactions in the country. So with the help of this discussion, we have understood about the various applications of blockchain technology. Firstly, blockchain can be used in financial services such as in the banking sector. It can help in digitizing vendor financing and it can help in tracking the status of transactions on a real-time basis. Secondly, in health and pharmaceutical sector, blockchain technology can help to reduce the burden of insurance claim frauds by ensuring transparency. And in the pharma sector, blockchain can help to prevent the sale of spurious drugs by tracking the supply chain network. Similarly, in the education sector, blockchain can be used to create a repository of students which will help to improve their credibility for the employers. In the agriculture sector, blockchain can be used to store seasonal data related to crop and climatic cycles, and this will benefit agriculture research and marketing agencies in the country. And lastly, blockchain can be used to bring inbuilt transparency, traceability, and efficiency in the property transactions. Now, in order to ensure that blockchain is used in all these sectors, the government can play a very important role. So, the government of India has endorsed the idea of using blockchain technology across all these sectors that we have discussed now. One such important example of use of blockchain technology by the government is that Niti Aayog is in the process of building a platform called as India Chain. And this India Chain will be an India-specific blockchain infrastructure that would help to leverage the benefits of the JAM Trinity or the Jandhan Aadhaar and Mobile Trinity. And also, it will help in promoting a digital economy in the country. So, we have understood that blockchain has wide-ranging applications, and to promote this, the government can play a very important role. One such example is Niti Aayog's initiative called as India Chain, which will be an India-specific blockchain infrastructure that will help to leverage the benefits of the JAM Trinity, and it will also help in promoting digital economy in the country. So I hope with the help of this discussion, you've understood many key points about this blockchain technology. Since this has been a much talked about topic this year, it's very important from your mains exam point of view. With this, we will move on to the next article. Next, we will discuss these two articles that appear on page 1 and page 8. It says President's nod for ordinance and death penalty is not the answer. These topics form a part of GS paper 2 under the heading Mechanisms, Laws, Institutions and Bodies Constituted for the Protection and Betterment of Vulnerable Sections. So the first article here says that the Union Cabinet has approved the ordinance to allow the courts to award death penalty to those who are convicted of raping girls below the age of 12 years. This ordinance provides for death sentence, life imprisonment or a minimum sentence of 20 years for the rape of a child below 12 years. The ordinance also says that the investigation of all cases of rape shall be completed within 2 months. Also, the deadline for the completion of trial in all rape cases will be 2 months, and a 6-month time limit has been given for the disposal of appeals in rape cases. So till now we have understood that the Union Cabinet has approved an ordinance to award death penalty to those convicted of raping children below the age of 12 years. The punishment for this is either death sentence or life imprisonment or a minimum sentence of 20 years. Also, the ordinance provides a deadline of 2 months for the investigation, 2 months for the trial and a deadline of 6 months for disposal of appeals in rape cases. So this is what has been given in the news. From exam point of view, you should also understand what are the ordinance making powers of the President. So Article 123 of the Indian Constitution empowers the President to promulgate ordinances during the recess of Parliament. These ordinances have the same force and effect as an act of Parliament. Next, the power to issue ordinances has been vested in the President to deal with unforeseen or urgent matters. But the exercise of this power by the President is subject to certain limitations. These limitations are that the President can promulgate an ordinance only when both the houses of Parliament are not in session or when either of the two houses of parliament is not in session. Secondly, the ordinance which is made when both the houses are in session is void. Thus, the power of the president to legislate by ordinance is not a parallel power of legislation. Next, the president can make an ordinance only when he is satisfied that the circumstances exist that render it necessary for him to take immediate action. Also, in the Cooper case in 1970, the Supreme Court held that the president's satisfaction can be questioned in a court on the ground of malefied. Also, an ordinance can be issued only on those subjects on which the parliament can make laws, and this limits the power of the president to issue ordinances. And lastly, every ordinance issued by the president during the recess of parliament must be laid before both the houses of parliament when they reassemble. So with the help of this discussion, we have understood about the ordinance making powers of the president. That is, that Article 123 of the Constitution empowers the president to promulgate ordinances during the recess of parliament. This ordinance will have the same force and effect as an act of the parliament, and it vests the powers in the president to deal with unforeseen or urgent matters. However, there are certain limitations as well that are associated with this ordinance making power. We will also discuss this second article that appears on the editorial page, which says death penalty is not the answer. Here, the author says that death penalty is not the answer to the increase in cases of sexual violence and rapes in India. In this article, the author lays emphasis on the need for the person who has been raped to survive the assault and in turn be enabled to book the perpetrators. The author says that brutal rapes in India have not decreased despite the enforcement of the Criminal Law Amendment Act 2013 post the Nirbhaya case. This Criminal Law Amendment Act prescribes death penalty and life imprisonment for sexual assaults that result in death of the victim or the victim being reduced to a persistent vegetative state. So the author says that death penalty is not the solution because it is undermining the need of rehabilitation of the rape survivors. The author says that there are various other problems also prevalent which have reduced the effectiveness of the already existing provisions. These other problems are like shoddy police investigations, low conviction rates, unwarranted delays, etc. Also, in cases of rape, insensitive methods of police investigation and tardy filing of charge sheets have together disempowered the rape complainants. Hence, the author has suggested that in light of these problems, various steps need to be taken in order to address the issue of low conviction rates for rape. For this, the author has suggested the following measures, that is, enhancing the conviction rates through reforms in the police and judicial systems, augmenting measures to rehabilitate and empower the rape survivors, greater allocation of state resources towards the setting up of fast-track courts and one-stop crisis centers, proper witness protection, expansive compensation for rape survivors, and an overhaul of the existing child protection services. Here, the author says that death penalty for the rape of girls below the age of 12 years is not the answer. Here, the focus should be on the person who is raped to survive the assault and book the perpetrators. The author says that rapes are still high despite the enforcement of the Criminal Law Amendment Act 2013, and death penalty undermines the need of rehabilitation of the rape survivors. There are various problems that are associated with the investigation of rape cases such as shoddy police investigations, low conviction rates, unwarranted delays, insensitive methods of investigation, and tardy filing of charge sheets. So, the author has suggested what needs to be done. For this, there should be reforms in the police and judicial systems. There is a need to rehabilitate and empower the rape survivors. There is a need for greater allocation of state resources towards setting up of fast-track courts. And lastly, setting up of crisis centers, proper witness protection, and compensation for the rape survivors, along with an overhaul of existing child protection services. So all the points pertaining to the ordinance powers of the President and the points discussed here are important from both prelims as well as mains exam point of view. With this, we will move on to the next article. We will discuss this article that appears on page 14, and it reads, what government can do to keep fuel prices under check. Now this topic is very important from the current affairs section point of view, because the rise in global crude oil prices and its impact on India have been in the news for quite some time, and it has also been discussed in detail in this year's economic survey. So we should understand what is the impact of an increase in global oil prices on the domestic oil prices of India, and what steps can be taken to avoid the increase in domestic oil prices in India. So first we will discuss how are the oil prices behaving in India and why they have been rising. So the crude oil prices in India have been rising, and for the first 3 months of 2018, crude oil prices have increased at the rate of around 24%. And the global crude oil prices are expected to increase to as high as around $70 per barrel. And this increase in global crude oil prices is also affecting the domestic oil prices in India. That is, the domestic prices of petrol and diesel have also been rising in India. Now there are two important reasons why crude oil prices are rising in India. The first major reason is the cut in oil production by the OPEC countries. And along with this, the geopolitical tensions in West Asia are also leading to an increase in global crude oil prices, which are also increasing the crude oil prices in India. And the second reason is the increase in excise duty on petrol and diesel by the government. The excise duties on petrol and diesel have been rising significantly, and these excise duties form around 22 to 25% of the retail price of petrol and diesel. So after discussing the reasons, we should know what will be the impact of this increase in oil prices. Firstly, there will be an increase in the import bill of India, because crude oil forms one of the major components of imports in India, and hence it may lead to an increase in current account deficit of the country. And the second direct impact will be the increase in inflation in the economy. Since crude oil is an important input in almost all the major industries, therefore an increase in crude oil prices will lead to an increase in the prices of final products and thus lead to an increase in inflation in the economy. So till now we have understood that the crude oil prices in India have increased at around 24% in the first 3 months of 2018. This has been happening because the global crude oil prices are increasing, and these global crude oil prices are expected to touch around $70 per barrel. Next, we have discussed the reasons why crude oil prices are rising in India. Firstly, due to the production cuts by the OPEC countries and the geopolitical tensions in West Asian countries. Secondly, the increase in excise duty on petrol and diesel since 2013-14 by the government is causing an increase in the domestic price of oil in India. Next, we have discussed the impact of this increase in oil prices on the Indian economy. Firstly, it will lead to an increase in India's import bill and thus increase its current account deficit. And secondly, it will lead to an increase in inflation. Now lastly, we will discuss what steps can be done to avoid such a situation, or what steps can be taken to control this increase in prices of oil. The first step that can be done is that the government can ask the oil marketing companies not to pass on the price rise in oil to the consumers. So as you all must be knowing that the domestic oil prices in India are now linked to the global oil market. That is, prices are de-administered now, which means that oil marketing companies can now sell these at their actual market price, and they do not have to sell it forcefully at the subsidized rates, which was the system that earlier used to happen. So in a way, this was good for the oil marketing companies because they do not have to sell oil forcefully at subsidized rates. But the negative impact of this is that now the consumer is forced to buy fuel at high prices because global crude oil prices are rising. So in this situation, one step that can be done is that the government can ask these OMCs to not pass on this price rise to the consumers. But again, this may result in reduction in profit margins of the OMCs. So there are both positives as well as negatives attached to this step. The second measure that can be taken by the government is to reduce the excise duty on petrol and diesel. Now, as we just read earlier, that government has been increasing the excise duty on both petrol and diesel, and this is leading to an increase in their final prices. So if the government cuts the excise duty, it will help in reducing the prices of oil. But the negative factor associated with this is that this will lead to a reduction in government revenue, because excise duty is a source of revenue for the government, and if the government reduces the excise duty, it will lead to a reduction in government revenue. Also, this reduction in government revenue may impact the developmental schemes in the country. This is because around 42% of the collections from excise duty are passed on to the states, and the remaining collections are used for the center's development schemes. So if excise duty is reduced, this total government revenue will be reduced, and this may have a negative impact on the revenue of the states as well as the developmental schemes in the country. So the two steps that can be taken to control the prices of oil are: firstly, the government can ask the oil marketing companies to not pass on this price rise to the consumers. However, this may result in reduction in profit margins of the oil marketing companies. Secondly, the government can reduce the excise duty on petrol and diesel, but this will lead to a reduction in government revenue, and this will result in a reduction in the revenues of the states as well as affect the center's development schemes. So even though there are both positives as well as negatives attached with both these measures, still they can be employed in the short term to control the oil prices in the country. This topic is important from both prelims as well as mains exam point of view, where in prelims they can ask what can be the impact of the increase in oil prices on Indian economy, and similarly this topic is important from the mains point of view for GS paper 3. With this, we will move on to the next article. Next, we will discuss this article that appears on page 18, and it reads, "A call to end plastic pollution." In the prelim syllabus, this topic forms a part of general issues on environmental ecology, biodiversity and climate change. And this news article talks about the Earth Day, which falls on 22nd April every year. So with the help of this article, we will try to understand some key facts about the Earth Day, because similar questions like this have been asked in the past in prelims exam. For example, in prelims 2014, a question was asked which said, consider the following statements regarding Earth Hour. So since questions on Earth Hour have been asked, we should also know some facts about Earth Day. So the Earth Day was first celebrated in the United States in 1970, and the idea for Earth Day was propounded by Gaylord Nelson. Now this year in 2018, the theme for Earth Day was spreading awareness about the pollution caused by plastic and the need to eventually end its use. In this respect, we should also understand the meaning of the term single-use plastics. Now, single-use plastics are those plastics that are disposed after being used once, and they cannot be put to use again or recycled. These single-use plastics include things like plastic bags, straws, coffee stirrers, soda and water bottles, as well as food packaging material. Also, this petroleum-based disposable plastic is not biodegradable or does not decompose. Instead, it breaks down into tiny particles after years. Also, the toxic chemicals that are released in the process of breaking down of these plastics find their way into the food and water supply. And this not only affects human health but also affects the marine life. So till now we have understood that Earth Day is celebrated on 22nd April, and it was first celebrated in United States in 1970, and the idea for it was propounded by Gaylord Nelson. The theme for this year's Earth Day was to spread awareness about the pollution created by plastic and to end its use. In this respect, we have also understood about the term single-use plastics, which are those plastics that are disposed after being used once and they cannot be recycled. This includes things like plastic bags, straws, stirrers, etc. And these petroleum-based disposable plastics are not biodegradable. Instead, they break into small particles after many years. Also, these toxic particles, after breaking down, find their way in the food and water supply. Apart from this, the Earth Day Network has launched an End Plastic Pollution campaign, and this campaign has four major components. These are leading a grassroots movement to support the adoption of a global framework to regulate plastic pollution. Next, educating, mobilizing and activating the citizens across the globe to demand that governments and corporations control and clean up plastic pollution. Thirdly, educating people worldwide to take responsibility for plastic pollution by choosing to reduce, refuse, reuse, recycle and remove plastics. And lastly, promoting local government regulatory and other efforts to tackle plastic pollution. So all these points that we have discussed till now are important from your prelims exam point of view. With this, we will move on to the next article. Next, we will discuss these two articles that appear on the editorial page, and it says Commonwealth and Lost Opportunities in London. Now, both these articles talk about the Commonwealth Summit and how it was short on substance. In both these articles, authors raise the issues that need to be addressed by the Commonwealth Summit. So, in this discussion, we will talk about all these issues that have not been addressed by the Commonwealth Summit according to these authors. The first issue that needs to be addressed by the Commonwealth Summit is migration. The authors say that the ability for the Commonwealth citizens to freely move among the Commonwealth countries was not concluded in this summit. Also, the Commonwealth citizens that migrated to United Kingdom during the 1940s to 70s in the post-independence era have not been provided proper citizenship rights. So the first issue that was not addressed by the Commonwealth Summit was the issue of migration. That is, the ability to move freely among the Commonwealth nations by the citizens was not concluded in the Commonwealth Summit. Also, no proper citizenship rights have been provided to Commonwealth migrants that have migrated to UK. The next issue that was not addressed by the Commonwealth Summit was mobility. So the authors say that issue of labor mobility among the Commonwealth members, such as from Ghana to India or from India to Caribbean islands, has not been discussed in an effective manner in the Commonwealth Summit. The next issue that has not been addressed by the Commonwealth Summit pertains to future leadership. So the future leadership has been passed on from the Queen to Prince Charles of Commonwealth, and it reflects that no change has been made in the leadership to suit the 21st century geopolitical scenario. Also, other countries such as India being ascended to parts of Commonwealth leadership have not been effectively articulated in this year's Commonwealth Summit. And the last issue that needs to be addressed pertains to India's national interests. Here the authors say that the Commonwealth currently seems to provide India with means to interact only with small island states, which does not serve well to India's national interests. So the other issues that have not been addressed by the Commonwealth Summit are mobility, that is the issue of labor mobility between Commonwealth nations has not been addressed. Next, the authors talk about the issue of future leadership, which has been passed on from the Queen to Prince Charles, and it is not suited to the 21st century geopolitical scenario. And lastly, the authors talk about India's national interests which have not been served properly by the Commonwealth Summit. This is because Commonwealth provides limited means to India to interact only with the small island states. And this forms a part of GS paper 2 under the heading Global Groupings and Agreements Involving India and Affecting India's Interests. And the students should read this article from the mains exam point of view. With this, we come to an end to today's newspaper discussion. Now let's move on to question for the day.